See if it's working. Okay, so it's a short webinar. It's only 30 minutes. And I'd like to spend just a couple of minutes just introducing myself and Esther and Salv. And then Esther will walk through these AML crime fighting KPIs, tell you all about that. And then I have a brief Q&A for Esther, basically. And then it's time for your questions. So there's a chat button on the bottom of Zoom, and you can see the chat button there. And feel free to ask a question if something crosses your mind when Esther's speaking or when Esther and I are doing a Q&A. And then we'll have a few minutes to discuss that. So let me see if this works here. So let's just do a little bit of housekeeping for a couple of minutes and introduction. Let's see if I can click here. So first of all, this is a Zoom webinar thing, so we can't see you, we can't hear you. We're just kind of like, it's just Esther and I talking. So don't worry about what you're wearing or what you're eating or anything like that. And yeah, if it's not interesting for you, then you can go. There's no obligation. So hopefully it's useful, but no obligation to stay. So, and also just if you have to duck out or something, then we'll send you these slides afterwards. If they're useful for you, we'll send you a link to this recording. If you want to view it again or you want to share it with a colleague, totally fine. And we'll also answer any questions that we can't get to in the time allotted. So first of all, who is Salv? So Esther and I both came from TransferWise, and my co-founder Tavi Tamkevi, he also came from TransferWise. And Tavi and I also met at Skype like about a decade ago, and we've been working together since then. Tavi and Esther in particular, they built up the compliance teams in TransferWise, and Tavi basically joined quite early to TransferWise. He built up the fraud team, the AML team, compliance as it stands today. And I did other stuff at TransferWise. I set up the analytics team, did some people team stuff, etc. And now for about the last year and a half or maybe 2 years, we've been working together on Salv, and we've been trying to figure out how we can help companies with AML topics. And so that includes transaction monitoring, online screening, sanction stuff, and some more stuff like that. And so we're just getting going. We've got a few clients, and we are trying to figure out how we can be most useful. And today we have Esther. Esther will speak in a minute about AML topics. So Esther is our product lead at Salv, and she's also a data nerd like me. We're both data nerds, so we're both sort of like at least part of our careers has been basically being data analysts or data scientists. And Esther in particular built up like tons of AML metrics in TransferWise, and is helping companies to do that now as well. And myself, yeah, I've done kind of analyst stuff a lot. So at ING Bank in Holland, in Skype here in Estonia, and also in TransferWise. All right, so we actually have a couple of polls, and hopefully this can pop up, or I can make it pop up. But basically, there should be a question showing up on your screen in a second. Let me see. We're still trying to figure out the Zoom stuff. So let me see if I can prompt it. Maybe I cannot. Maybe this won't work. So anyway, oh, there we go. Cool. Okay, so hopefully you see on your screen a little question that's popped up, and it's just multiple choice. So the question is, I'll just go back to the screen here. So the question is, so how developed are your AML team's crime fighting KPIs? We're going to tell you a bit more about what those are, but just we'd like to get a quick baseline for what they are. So we've been setting them up for years. We're just starting to set them. We haven't even started setting them, or what is a crime fighting KPI? So if you could just answer in the little pop-up that you see on your screen, and then we'll look at those in a couple minutes, the results. And now I'd like to pass it over to Esther, who's going to tell you a bit more about crime fighting KPIs in AML.
Yes, hello everyone. Nice to see you all here today. Yeah, I'm going to give a brief intro on what these crime fighting KPIs might look like in AML, and then we can move on with further discussion. So I usually like to split AML KPIs into different pillars. Here you can see an example with 4 pillars. Well, it might seem a lot, like why do you need all of these? But in the end, as the area is quite complex, AML and compliance in general, then there are so many aspects that you need to measure in order to really come up with one meaningful whole. And that's why the pillars are here. Today, we're not going to cover all of these. We're specifically talking about crime fighting, which I personally maybe find the most interesting or exciting. So hopefully in the future, we will also cover the other ones. But yeah, let's take a dive into the details. Now, all of these examples that I'm going to bring, those are the main ones that I usually see that are useful for different organizations. Obviously, you might have some other more specific needs that are not covered by these, and that's perfectly okay. So the first and probably the most important one is, as we call it, alert to SAR ratio. But essentially, it's your true positive rate. So your system is raising some kind of alerts. We're talking about transaction monitoring here, but also other controls. And you're working through those. So the question is, what percentage of these guys that were highlighted by your system are actually the bad guys, or whom you consider worthy to report to the authorities? There are a couple of things that you can get stuck with here. So one of the main ones is that there's no proper feedback loop. The police will never tell you if, yeah, John was really a criminal and now he's in jail. That won't happen, right? So you have to simply deal with the fact that the most effective feedback loop are your employees who make the decisions. And another question that often pops up with this is, what's a good ratio then? We know that often what the market standard is, it's 2%, but that's very, very low. Like 98% of your work goes out the window in that sense. We think that it's doable to achieve 20% if you have smart people, good technology. So yeah, the true positive. Next one. Next one I like to call the false negative. So how do you know what you do not know? Well, there's no perfect answer to this, but one thing to always consider is that if you have different regions for your product or different segments of customers, you have to make sure that all these segments are equally covered by your controls. Then you can actually say that, yes, I'm checking all of these and I'm taking into account all the individual differences there. So essentially seeing if the percentage of alerted customers across all segments is kind of on a similar level. So, yeah. The third one is, well, it's not a primary one to track, but it's a good thing to keep an eye on. So essentially, if you have covered your true positive rates, your false negative rates, then the question comes, how are you actually handling your workload? And why does it link back to crime fighting is that if you have a huge backlog of alerts, like what I have seen in my work is that usually you don't want to automatically suspend the accounts of all these customers. So the most effective way of working is that if you have a decent backlog, you can get to the alerts in a reasonable time frame, which means that if there are criminals there, then you can still stop them in their tracks. Because otherwise what can happen is that the guys simply do their transactions, launder their money and go away. That's a quite frequent pattern that you'll see with very long backlogs. essentially you just noticed that someone laundered a significant amount of money a couple of months ago, but now they're gone. So yeah. And the next one is kind of similar to the previous one, but it has a different impact because, well, you can get a huge backlog with alerts, but at the same time, you can also get significant backlogs with unreported cases. So usually you would have different teams tackling these. And if the reporting team is struggling, then although you have gone through the alerts, found the really bad guys, then now the authorities won't find out about this in a meaningful time frame. Like in my previous experience working with different companies, I have seen examples where this is really relevant. Even if you delay this process by a couple of days, it might mean that one guy is actually able to onboard a plane in London and fly to some Asian country where the police cannot get to him anymore. So this has happened, and this happens frequently. So you shouldn't really underestimate the need of being efficient in this process. And then the last one is maybe the most experimental of the ones that we've listed here. So I highlighted with the initial alert to SAR ratio that measuring the true positive rate is difficult because there is no meaningful feedback loop. And well, the police will never be able to give you this live feedback. But what is possible is getting feedback from other financial companies, seeing if they have also thought that a certain customer is somehow bad. So with this, Salv is trying to help a bit. We have technology in beta testing phase that actually gives you the opportunity to anonymously and securely share this information by not breaching any GDPR guidelines or anything like that. So, and this will give you one additional layer of validation for the true positive rate. Yeah. So as said, this is the example set of KPIs that we have covered here. Definitely, there are some of these are more relevant for you. Some of them are less relevant. But yeah, this is our suggestion. You can always ask questions, come back to us later. So.
Okay, amazing. Thank you, Esther. So I would like to take a look at what you guys thought at our first poll question. So we can see, I hope you can see this. Hope this little pop-up pops up for you as well. But I'll just read it out just in case. So it says, or the question is, how developed are your AML team's crime-fighting KPIs? So we've got 27% said that we've been setting it up for years. So it's like about a quarter of you. And about half said we're just starting to set them, and another quarter said we haven't even started setting them. And yeah, maybe one person said they don't know what it is. So hopefully that one person knows now a little bit more about what they are. And for the 3/4 of you that are just starting to set them or haven't started them yet, then hopefully this is useful content for you. And of course you can ask myself questions or Esther questions, or yeah, sort of anybody in our team as well after, if you like. Okay, so let me click again. Okay, so we have another question for you. And this question, hopefully a little prompt pops up in a moment for you as well. And I'll just read it out while it's coming up. So what is your biggest struggle in setting up KPIs for an AML team? It's not easy, as Esther said. So is it technical challenge? It's hard to set them up. Is it more like operational problems? So it's difficult to run them regularly and gain insights from them. Is it organizational? Either in the AML team or in the wider organization, they don't seem that important, or other. So if you'd like to answer other, then it would be great if you could click this little chat button and let us know what we missed actually, or what's important in your organization or something you're struggling with. So you can do that in the next couple of minutes, and we will take a look at them. So now I'd like to ask Esther some questions that I had. So I've read her blog post, and I've discussed this topic with her, but I think there's a couple of other things that are interesting as well. I'll just put them on the screen here so that you know what we're talking about. But basically, so one thing that I've seen before, I've seen in different companies and over time that it really is hard to measure these crime fighting KPIs. Esther, why is it so important to do it anyway, despite the difficulty?
Well, obviously there are several reasons, but what I usually find the most important is that, or what I've seen in my experience is that the teams who are performing the best are actually mission driven. So there has to be a clear understanding why you are doing your work, what's the impact, and how you actually make the world a better place. It might sound cheesy, but it is important because it gives your team a purpose, and at the same time, it's really a good measurement to understand how effective you are in your work, because you might have very smart people working and going through the alerts and so on. But if your technology on the background is really bad and it is not able to highlight the bad guys, then those smart people are simply not that efficient. They cannot do their work. So two sides really, mission driven and effective.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, the way I've thought about it is that, I mean, AML has a purpose. It's been in force or it's kind of been a growing force for like, for 100 years, something like that. And we always have to remind ourselves that, like, yeah, we're actually just trying to stop criminals. It's not just about ticking the boxes and the compliance. It's actually the main thing is actually to do that, and you need to. If you're going to do that, then you should measure how well you're doing that and try to get better at that every week, every year.
Exactly.
Okay, so you mentioned in the last answer that that sort of the best AML teams are kind of mission driven, like they're really focused on what they're doing and trying to do a good job, trying to stop crime. So what's the difference basically between teams that have very strong KPIs, like very well thought out, and teams that are just kind of developing this or haven't really developed it yet? What have you seen?
Well, first of all, I think that even weak KPIs are better than no KPIs, because that at least means that there is a thought process in place. Sure, there's a room for improvement, but you've already done something, so it's a start. But I think the answer here, it's kind of generic across different areas for KPIs really, because why would you use them? Why would you measure your work? Again, it gives your team a purpose. If you have chosen the right KPIs, then the team will actually feel empowered. They can drive something, they can change something. It's not that they just come to work in the morning, do their job, and then leave, and nothing changes. And also, strong KPIs can actually drive a very good initiative. So with empowerment comes the fact that people actually start to talk, start to contribute, and make a bigger change within the organization.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, definitely agree with that. I think I've seen that in all teams. I think, good companies are kind of KPI driven as well, or OKR driven, or whatever you call it, or goal driven. And I think, yeah, it's kind of a good principle. Okay, I'm going to skip this question because I just noticed we've been talking too much and we're not getting to the questions yet. So maybe this one as the last question, or last of my questions. So you mentioned already, in the last answer, that KPIs definitely help the AML team. So it helps with motivation. It helps you, see the impact of your work and things like this. But are there other benefits? So like the AML team, it takes some work to set up these KPIs and to measure them regularly. How does it help the rest of the organization, the rest of the compliance team, or just like even the whole, I don't know, bank or fintech?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so with that, maybe some of the other pillars have like a clearer link with the wider organization, like if you would be talking about customer impact, for example. But actually, you shouldn't forget crime fighting, because one aspect of all compliance teams who are quite successful already in their work is always, how much do you want to invest into technology? How many more bad guys do you want to catch? And this is where the real messaging comes in. So what are you seeing on your platform today? And through these KPIs, you can communicate this efficiently up to the board level. So you can get the kind of feedback on, okay, do we need to invest more? Are we doing good already? Or like, what's the general state? You can start this dialogue with people outside the team. And another thing is maybe wider about, it comes down to marketing and your target customer groups. So again, if you are really good at catching the bad guys, then you will have a clear understanding on how different customer segments actually measure against this. So you might find that there are certain segments that you're currently targeting that actually bring in unproportionately many criminals, which also means that it is more work for your compliance team, which means that it's more costly to onboard these customers. So there you might actually come up with decisions that, okay, we shouldn't sell our product to Nigeria, for example, because 90% of everything is fraud. So
yeah, okay. I was just when you were speaking that I was thinking that there's one other aspect that I've thought of as important, and that is, people in AML teams are doing really important work. It's actually really hard work as well. And I think if you can speak in KPIs and progress and targets and these kind of things, you can help other teams or, I don't know, senior management to understand like the important work that you're doing. And basically it's just very helpful for communication, as you said, and especially about like kind of the most important aspect of your work, which is like crime fighting. So good to have robust KPIs on that in that area. Okay, so I'm going to skip this other question as well, and I want to get to our poll really quickly, and then save a few minutes for questions if they've come up in our chat. So thank you very much. Okay, so the question was, what is your biggest struggle in setting KPIs in your AML team? So roughly half said it's a technical issue, tricky to set them up. The other half said it's an operational issue, so difficult to run them regularly. And one person said organizational and nobody said other. So, okay, so that's pretty interesting. What do you think of that, Esther?
That's quite realistic. Like kind of 50-50 split between technical and operational. I've seen different companies struggling with actually getting access to the proper data, so that can easily happen. And then there's the question, how do you track the KPIs? Do you have the technology in place to do it regularly? Because if you can't create visibility, then it's quite pointless.
Mm-hmm. So I wonder if I can bring up not Q&A, but the chat to see if there's any questions. I don't think I can see how to do that. Sorry, apologies for this, but yeah, basically I wanted to see if there's any questions.
I don't think there are. Can
you see? Okay, sorry, I just like literally can't see it on the, oh, here it is, chat. Okay, actually I don't see any questions here. If that's true. Okay. Okay, I see, just a sec. So how about since I don't see any questions here, I'll ask Esther one more question that I wanted to ask her. And if there are questions, then Esther and I, like, you can still post them in Zoom, or you can email us after, and we'll get back to you. But I'll ask. Oops, hang on. Sorry, having slide struggles here. Maybe there is one question here. Okay, there's a question. Okay, maybe we can answer this. So are you going to help us with the integration and create the rules?
Yeah, sure. With us, we have taken the approach that one generic set of rules cannot really work for different organizations, because the types of crime are so different. So with each customer, during the integration phase, we work individually. We map out the data, we understand the types of crime that are actually present within the organization, and based on that work, we will create the set of rules for you specifically. So, yeah.
Okay, and then I have one other question that's come in from Arturas. If the ratio between alerts and SAR increases to 20%, wouldn't it also increase the rate of unnoticed bad cases?
Yeah, that's a very good question, because it is indeed a balancing act. I've seen cases where the true positive rate is even over 90%. And there definitely you have the problem that you're missing the wider picture. So you can fine tune your rules or machine learning models to find really specific types of crime, but you won't understand what's happening outside of it. But based on our experience with different financial institutions, 20% tends to be kind of the sweet spot. So essentially you will have some controls that will trigger very few alerts for you. But when they do trigger, then you know that, okay, this is probably going to be bad. But at the same time, on the background, you have slightly wider controls where the true positive rate is maybe around 10% or maybe even lower a bit, which gives you a kind of wider understanding. Okay, who are my customers who are transacting in like very high volumes? So this 20% is something that we suggest based on previous experience. So.
Mm-hmm. Okay, I'm just conscious of everybody's time. As I said at the beginning, we will send out a copy of these slides, and we'll send out a copy of this this blog post. You can find it on our website, or you can type this in as well, this bit.ly link that's at the bottom. If you have other questions, you're more than welcome to email Esther or myself, and we will happily get back to you. We're also going to send out a brief survey. This was actually our first webinar, so we'd love to know how we can do them better in the future, and if there's topics that you're interested in that we could talk about that'd be interesting. We'd love to hear that as well. So thank you, Esther, for all your insights, and thank you everyone for participating and listening in. And we will be in contact by email, and feel free to reach out. Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye.